Welcome to this podcast, the Pivot Simply podcast, Lisa. And it's an honor to have you here. And I would like to take a moment to introduce Lisa here. She is she's a PhD, former eco entrepreneur, author of the book Bag Lady, TEDx speaker, and she's also a leadership coach, developing leaders of high performing teams through emotional intelligence and leadership training. So, welcome, Lisa. So, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Nilesh, and thank you for having me.
Great. So, Lisa, first of all, I would like to know from you about your journey. So, you have published your book, Bag Lady. We would like to know about that as well. So, can you please tell us your background and journey as an eco entrepreneur, and how did your experience in that field shape up your perspective on leadership and also on emotional intelligence? So I did have a read about your journey, how your own perspective evolved uh, on leadership and emotional intelligence, the importance of these. So we would like to know from you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, if you've read my book, you know I started my journey, my career as an English teacher. I was a high school English teacher for many years, really, almost about 10 years. And somewhere around 2005, on a trip to Australia, I discovered reusable grocery bags, and I became aware of the devastating impacts that plastic bags were having on our environment. At the time, the US was using 1 billion plastic bags a day. And what we know about plastic, about a third of it escapes into our environment. So we're talking about 2 billion bags a week escaping into our environment. And they waft over our streets and they get stuck in trees and they clog the city gutters. And eventually, they all begin to break up into smaller and smaller pieces, but they don't biodegrade. They just break up into small pieces, which wash into our gutters, our washways, our drains, and out into the ocean. There they are wreaking havoc on marine life. Scientists say that there is currently about a dump truck worth of plastic entering our oceans every minute. And we will have more plastic in the ocean by weight than fish by 2050. That's the estimate, if we don't do something about it. And I said, well, I think we should do something about it. So even though I was just an English teacher, I had no business education, no business experience. I decided to start a company to bring reusable bags to the United States. This product was not available at all here in the United States. And my friends told me this was a terrible idea. They said Americans would never pay for a bag. They would never bring their own bag back to the store. They would look at me very seriously and say, that is European. We don't do that. But I had been talking to my friends and telling them about the impacts of bags. And I was bringing my own bags back to the store, and they all wanted my bags. I gave them what I had. And I thought, I think if Americans knew what I knew, I think they would bring their own bags back to the store. And that was really the whole premise of my company. So I founded a company called One Bag at a Time. And the mission really was saving the world one bag at a time. And I got up every day and pursued that mission for the next 12 years. So that first year, I found a supplier. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I had a list. So I started cold calling on the back staircase overlooking the faculty parking lot. And my first year in business, I sold 250,000 grocery bags. In my second year, I sold 2 million grocery bags. And in my third year, I sold 8 million grocery bags. it was just right at that time when America was ready. I started selling, I had a website and a supply chain right at the time when Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth came out and global warming became a household word. Everybody wanted to solve this problem. I had a product that would help for 99 cents. It was the easiest first step that many people took as they began to become environmentally aware of the impacts of their own behavior on the environment. So for the first 5 years of my company, I sat down in my office and I took orders as fast as I could write them. It was crazy times. I learned a lot. I learned how to get very good at logistics. I did a lot. I learned how to do key account management. I learned accounting. There was a lot that I learned. And I just established myself as one of the top suppliers of this item in the US. And I pursued that for a number of years. So there's a few things I can talk about. I can talk about my leadership. I can talk about my values and what was important to me. And I can talk about my mistakes and how I paid for them. And I can talk about my exit ultimately. So
yeah, so like your story is really empowering, Lisa. You have written a book, and so what's your, like, you have shared your story. Yeah, so you have written this book, Bag Lady. So what really, like, you have shared your story. So but what insights would you really would like to share with the audience, and you have shared through your book? So what are the main insights, and what are the inspirations they can look forward to through your book?
I think the main message of the book is that if you have something you want to do, if you want to make a difference in your world, do it. Don't give up. Don't let anybody stand in your way. Just get up every day and do that thing that you know is right. And there will be naysayers. There will be people who say you can't do it. Don't listen to any of them. Just do what you know in your heart is right and go after it with all of your energy. So don't be afraid to break the mold. Don't be afraid to do something new. And don't quit. Don't ever quit. Just keep going, no matter what happens. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I would say is hang on to your leadership values, right? It was really about saving the earth one bag at a time. And as long as I stayed true to that mission, to that value, that this was, and I was equally dedicated to the people on my supply chain. I did a lot of inspections. I made sure nobody was hurt. From the beginning to the end of my supply chain, everybody was treated with respect. Everybody was paid a living wage. And I ensured that. So hang on to your leadership values. They will guide you. You're going to make mistakes. There's going to be problems, pandemics, all kinds of things can happen. But if you stay true to your mission and your values, you can go a long, long, long way. And the other thing would be leadership. Look, 9 out of 10 startups fail. And really, why did I succeed? I had no business experience, no education, right? It is because of emotional intelligence. And that's just a fancy way of saying I paid attention to people. I listened more than I talked. Some people think leadership is about being the loudest person in the room. No, leadership is about being the best listener in the room. You learn a lot when you really listen, when you empathize, when you understand what people's problems are. You don't have to solve them, but as a leader, when you tell somebody you understand their problem and you believe in them to solve it, they start solving their own problems. They have the energy, they have the drive, they know how to solve their problems. They just need you to believe in them. And this is how you supercharge a team. This is how you supercharge a company. You have to listen and be in your ecosystem, listen to your community and meet their needs. You are serving their needs. As long as you serve their needs, they will be your customer, right? But you have to listen first. So, yeah, leadership is really about listening, empathy, and serving your employees and your customers. Yeah,
I could feel your energy, Lisa. Actually, I was getting goosebumps when you were like, you can feel that authentic energy when someone is speaking from their core values. So thank you so much for sharing this. My next
all
question.
those lessons are in my book, and you can see you'll see day by day how I learned. And sometimes I made mistakes and I didn't do the right thing, and I always paid for it, right? So yeah, I hope you do read the book because it's a good read and you'll learn all those lessons too. It's an easier way to learn them than from me.
No, absolutely. And I would like to also share the link of your book if you have one.
Yes,
So I would
please,
share that
please.
in the description section. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Bag Lady.
I like the illustration of of the cover page of the book. It's
Yeah.
really good. So you have you are a TEDx speaker, Lisa. You are an author. Now you have a platform to convey your message to the diversified audience. So how do you go about crafting your message which resonate with them? So if you can guide others who are looking to go on these platforms, write a book, so how would you advise them? What advice would you give?
First of all, know your audience. Who are you talking to? What is the message that they want to hear? When I speak to consumer groups, I talk a lot about the power of individual consumers, those little choices that we make every day that add up to big impacts on our environment. When I talk about leadership to leadership groups, I talk about core values and being true to your mission and learning from your mistakes. So know your audience. We all have so much to say. We could all say so many things. Just hone it down to one clear message for that audience and what's important to them. And the second thing is start strong. Always start with something really important or really shocking or really unusual or a story. Always start strong. You get your audience's attention in the first maybe 3 to 5 seconds, right? When I did my TED Talk, I was offered the TED Talk and I asked the TEDx people if I could bring in a partner because I'm an anti-bag activist, but I was recently introduced to a friend now who is a bag manufacturer who turned his whole company green. And it took him 5 years. It was a really hard transition going green, getting plastic to be better. And we started the TEDx where he said, in my family, the more plastic bags you use, we believe the more plastic bags you use, the better it was for everyone. My family's been in the plastic manufacturing business for 3 generations. And then I said, in my house, we believe the fewer plastic bags you use, the better, right? So you get something really important, 2 different opposite points of view. How did we come together? What did we agree on? What brings us together on that stage? That's interesting. Always find that thing that will hook your audience and bring them in immediately. And tell a story, have some facts and figures, not too much, just a little, enough to support what you're saying and come back to your clear message. So, yeah, I think that would be my advice.
Thank you. This is really useful because there are many aspirants there, including me. And Your advice is really useful, and this is what I learned. Like you mentioned about target audience related to specific groups, I never thought it that way. So really thanks, no, and useful information you have shared. Like you mentioned, for any leader, they need to have emotional intelligence. That skill is essential, having empathy. So how do they go about building these skills as a leader? So what would you advise them?
That is a great question. So first of all, let me just explain what emotional intelligence is, because there's a lot of confusion about what it is. Our emotions are a highly evolved system that we all have for assessing our surroundings for threats and responding, and for seeking safety. So when we feel a threat, our senses are always out there scanning the environment for threats, even though we don't cognitively think about it. So if you think about somebody 10,000 years ago walking through the jungle, if we feel something, we feel them before we can think it, right? Maybe it's a breath behind a bush, a twig snapping, the bird stops singing, something very, very subtle. You don't even think it, but your body knows, hey, I think there's something up here. And you feel it. If we pay attention to that, we do better. This is an evolutionary advantage. You are a lot more likely not to get eaten by the tiger behind the bush, right? If you pay attention and back off. If you just go, I don't know, I don't believe in any of that, and struck right in, that guy's dead, right? We've all descended from the guy who said, I don't like it around here, I'm backing off. Because those are the people who survive. Now, in an office, the threats are more a lack of respect, being cut off, not being listened to, not being recognized for your efforts. And all of these set off a classic fight, flight, or freeze response, just like in the jungle, right? And what happens physiologically, this is a physical reaction. Our emotions are physical. Your brain turns off rational thought and floods your system with adrenaline. Because if you overthink that tiger, you're dead. You just have to start running.
Okay.
In an office, fight, flight, and freeze, we know what that looks like. Fighting in an office, backstabbing, undermining, territorialism, turf wars, all of these things. This is how we fight in the office. The flight response, you've seen somebody who just gets flooded, says, I don't have time for this. I have got something better to do. And they just walk away. That's the flight response. And the freeze response, we've probably all seen somebody in a meeting who gets surprised by a question or an issue, and they're like, They're frozen. They're a deer in the headlights. All of these things happen, right? So when you understand, emotional intelligence is being able to recognize what the threat is, where the safety is, and act strategically to calm everybody down, regain rational composure, assess the best options, and find the best way forward. That's what emotional intelligence is. It means really understanding people. We are all set off by threats all the time, and some of them are really subtle. So if you want to do this for yourself, the first thing, accept yourself. You have strengths, you have weaknesses. Nobody is good at everything. That's why we work in teams. So when somebody comes up to you to discuss and wants to talk about what you're weak in, you bring in the team member who compensates for that. Say, yeah, that's not my strength, but this is why I have this team member. So we work together, we compensate for our weaknesses. If you don't know your weaknesses, they will trip you up and somebody will get you into a fight, flight, or freeze response. Not helpful, and it's distracting in the workplace. You won't get work done. So know your weaknesses, know your strengths, and really lean into them. The second advice is be aware. You can't be emotionally intelligent unless you are being aware of what you're feeling and why you're feeling that way. What just happened? What am I feeling? Why do I feel threatened by that? And if you can answer those 3 questions about yourself, then you can start to practice answering those. Oh, I think she just had a freeze response or a flight response. What is she reacting to? Why does she feel that way? Why is she threatened by what he said? Oh, she's been working on that for 2 years. Yes, he is threatening what her work is, right? So if you understand yourself, bring it up out of the subconscious into the conscious. Keep people calm and understand why their people are reacting the way they do. And pretty soon you'll be able to anticipate how they will react. And then you can begin to influence them and you can begin to lead them.
Oh, this is so powerful. Like, I think most of the people are not realizing the power behind understanding these physiological behaviors, not even about themselves. So it is so powerful. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing this. And
This is the basis of my leadership coaching now. It's very powerful. I've seen people double their salary. I've seen real amazing transformations when people begin to pay attention to how they feel. We're supposed to pay attention. It's an advantage.
Yes, absolutely. It'll change the whole experience within the business, at workplace, in personal relationships as well. So, yes, and
Right.
I'm sure it is going to benefit many people as they come to know about it. So, my next question is actually linked to my previous question. So, now we have learned about how leaders can develop their emotional intelligence, but what are the common challenges they face? So you as a coach, when you help others, so what are the common challenges they face, even though they are aware they need to be working on their emotional intelligence and building their leadership skills, but what are the common challenges and how can they overcome those challenges?
The main challenge really is insecurity. If somebody has not accepted themselves, and that really, I mean that in a really broad way, accepting yourself, being very authentic to who you are and what you really believe, just be yourself. People can feel it when you're being fake, when you're trying to be something that you're not. Just be yourself. That's all anyone wants you to be. And that way they always know what they're getting. So if you don't accept yourself, it's really hard to be yourself. So embrace yourself, embrace all of yourself, and be proud of everything. And know your strengths. Again, know your strengths and your weaknesses. Yes, we all have them. And we all have parts of ourselves we don't like. Even the parts you don't like, embrace it. Because your unwillingness to embrace that makes it a trigger for you. And that's when you are going to get triggered in a fight, flight, or freeze response, and you're going to have a hard time maintaining your own emotional cool, as we say. So that's the main obstacle. The other obstacle is that some people just think, oh, I'm not supposed to be emotional. I'm not emotional. I'm rational. Well, everybody's emotional, right? We need emotions for everyday life. You couldn't make the smallest decision in your life without emotions, because you have to want something. And there's options for everything. You wouldn't be able to know what you want for lunch today unless you want something. You would be like Alexa, you would say, oh, I found something on the web for that. No, you have to decide tuna or turkey, soup or salad. You have to decide what you want. And this is true with every decision. At some point, you have to want to make a decision, and you have to balance what is right for me, what is right for everybody else, what's going to work in the world. What I want may not work in the world. Other people might not accept that. So you have to really think about listening to all of that and that fine balance.
Yeah, so like this is really interesting. You said unable to accept ourselves actually is gives us triggers. So when I so this is like really interesting. So that acceptance and trigger has that relationship, like so, and unconsciously we are not aware of it. So
Correct.
this is really interesting fact you have shared. And also, I would like to know, like, is it like women, being they have a feminine side, they do have a masculine side as well, but is it like male, they find it hard to connect with this emotional intelligence concept? Is it so? How do they accept this emotional intelligence over
Yeah,
women?
I find sometimes I've worked with women who do not believe in emotions and try to distance themselves from their own emotional self, and they have to learn to embrace it. And I've worked with men who also. So this is not gender specific.
Yeah.
What I do find is a little different is how we express our emotions. When men are triggered, they're more likely to be aggressive, to be the fight response, right? So they're more likely to be just direct and aggressive. Women are more likely to freeze or flight. How it expresses itself is tends to be a little more gender specific, but we all have emotions. We all feel the difference between threat and safety. And like I said, those threats in the office are very subtle, a lack of respect. And that is true for men and for women. If you disrespect a man in the workplace, you better believe there is going to be trouble. They do not tolerate it. And women often do tolerate it, but that's to their own detriment. Women also need to stand up and demand to be respected equally with men. We bring an equal amount of brain power, and the companies that work with women, equal numbers of women and men, actually make more money. So it's really important that women value themselves, that men value themselves, and that when that impulse to be aggressive or something, just check your ego at the door. Just bring your ego down, demand respect, but it's not about ego. This is just about, let's talk to each other in a respectful tone. This is a professional environment. I understand we're all getting passionate about what's happening. We're all afraid of what's happening. There's a lot of issues going on. Let's keep the tone respectful here. And that's all it really means, is being respectful to people, listening to them.
That's a great perspective.
Right?
Really, really, yeah, it's totally very useful actually. And yeah, as many corporations, organizations, they follow this. And I think there's a high need of having this kind of coaching for all the organizations, so that organizations will, grow even more when once we
Yeah.
balance this.
Yeah, I do corporate trainings, and it really is for whole teams to understand how it works and to grow, and whole leadership teams. And they get so much benefit for their people below and above. It's I do it by Zoom. So yeah, reach out if you're interested in corporate training.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to share all the details about your coaching, and this is already quite inspiring. Like all, we have already got few different perspectives on how we perceive leadership training and emotional intelligence and this acceptance. So thank you for sharing this. As a leadership coach, what strategies do you follow to empower other leaders to help them unlock their own potential? So what kind of strategies do you follow, if you can share some of them?
Yeah, some of them are what I've shared already, is just being aware, accepting yourself and being aware. And that's a coaching process, right? I help people really talk about themselves, be open about themselves, be open about what they want, and who they are, and accepting themselves. That's a process. I think that, really what I can share of what works most when you are working with other people and emotions are involved is, first of all, be aware of your own emotions and manage your own emotions first. Rule number one, don't get involved. Step back, take a breath, calm yourself down first. And the second thing is, when you're in doubt, there's two strategies that almost always work. One is empathize. You have to listen, you have to understand, you have to really think, okay, how would I feel if I was in their shoes? Why does this feel so bad to them? Understand and empathize. That is the first approach. It always, no matter what's happening, if you just default to empathy, you're going to find calm and safety and a better way forward. The other strategy would be alignment. So after you empathize, really say, okay, what is the common goal? I see you're trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. What brings us together? It's just like what I was saying with my the guy on my TEDx. He was trying to make plastic bags. I was trying to have no plastic bags. But we all know plastic is such an important part of our economy. We just said we just need better plastic, and we found a way to just agree on what would make it better. So if you calm yourself first, empathize with others, and find alignment, then you'll find a way forward. So that would be the strategy for leadership that works almost 100% of the time. If you do all those three things every single time, you'll find your way forward.
Oh, thank you for sharing this. This whole episode is so powerful, and like the way your perspective is, it's actually it's gonna empower more people to be real leaders in their field. So thank you so much for sharing this, and thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this podcast. I am totally honored, and I'm grateful to you.
You're very welcome. It's an honor to be here, and I really do hope that people listen and learn from the podcast and are empowered and go forward with just more awareness and calm in their heart. And yeah, I'm very excited. Thank you so much for having me.